In today's stories, we follow content creators who made the dumbest decisions in the most dangerous places on Earth. From a vlogger who stepped out of her car near a lion pride to a photographer who stood up in an open jeep as a hippo charged. But first, we start in Australia, where a teenager walked to the edge of a crocodile-infested river for a selfie she'd never post. It was July 18, 2017, when the scorching Australian sun beat down on Kakadu National Park in the Northern Territory of Australia, one of the most remote and dangerous wilderness regions in the country. The dry season had transformed the ancient landscape into a harsh, unforgiving environment where every shadow promised relief and every waterway beckoned with false promises of safety. 19-year-old Phoebe Galt had arrived at this remote wilderness with two close friends, their backpacks heavy with camera equipment and dreams of filming the perfect travel footage for their growing online following. Phoebe was no ordinary tourist. As a travel vlogger documenting her journey across northern Australia, she had spent months recording her trip, each video carefully crafted to capture the raw beauty and danger that drew thousands of visitors each year. Her followers expected footage from increasingly daring locations, and this ancient parkland represented the crown jewel of her expedition. The trio followed the marked walking trail to an official viewing platform overlooking a billabong system known to park staff as a high-risk crocodile area, a slow-moving river channel famous for its large population of saltwater crocodiles. Multiple warning signs lined the path in bold red lettering, stating that crocodiles inhabited these waters year-round and that visitors must remain within designated viewing zones at all times. These barriers created a clear boundary between safety and the wild. From the elevated platform, the river appeared deceptively peaceful. The muddy water moved lazily between mangrove-lined banks, its surface occasionally disturbed by gentle ripples that could have been wind or something far more dangerous below. The viewing area provided a good vantage point for photography, but Phoebe wanted something closer, more dramatic than the standard tourist shots. Saltwater crocodiles are apex predators that have remained virtually unchanged for millions of years, perfectly adapted killing machines that can grow over 15 feet long and weigh more than half a ton. These reptiles possess one of the strongest bite forces of any animal on Earth, capable of crushing bone with a single snap. Their hunting strategy relies on patience and stealth, often remaining motionless at the water's edge or just below the surface while waiting for prey to approach the shoreline. What makes them particularly dangerous is their ability to stay almost completely submerged while watching potential prey. Their eyes, nostrils, and ears sit on top of their heads, allowing them to observe without exposing their bodies. When they attack, they can surge forward with explosive power, launching from the water with terrifying speed in short bursts on land or in water. After several minutes on the platform, Phoebe made the decision that would cost her life. She stepped past the safety barrier and began walking down the sloping riverbank toward the water's edge, leaving the designated viewing area and moving into the restricted shoreline zone. One of her friends hesitated at the barrier and warned her not to go closer, but Phoebe kept moving, and the others followed a few steps behind with the camera equipment. The muddy shoreline was exactly the type of terrain park authorities warned visitors to avoid: soft ground that allowed crocodiles to approach silently. One friend stayed several steps back and urged Phoebe to return to the marked path, but she continued moving closer to the waterline, focused entirely on getting the perfect shot. The afternoon light was ideal for filming, and the calm river behind her looked harmless. Standing only a few feet from the edge, Phoebe turned her back to the water while her friend began recording. The muddy river behind her appeared still, but visibility was poor due to sediment that created perfect camouflage for predators. What she could not see was the massive saltwater crocodile that had been watching the group since they left the safety barrier, lying motionless in the shallows near the muddy bank. The attack came without warning. The crocodile, estimated at over 4.5 meters long, burst forward from the edge of the water, its jaws clamping down on her leg and hip, the enormous bite force knocking her off balance instantly. Instead of spinning immediately, the crocodile dragged her straight toward the water with powerful backward pulls, using its weight and grip to overpower her. before she could react. Her friend screamed as the animal hauled her across the muddy bank and into the river. Once in deeper water, the crocodile began a violent death roll, twisting its body to subdue its prey and pull her fully underwater, the natural killing technique used by large crocodiles when resistance stops. The muddy current churned as the animal spun, and within seconds, Phoebe disappeared beneath the surface. Her friends ran toward the bank but stopped at the edge, knowing entering the water could trigger another attack. The river quickly returned to its calm appearance, hiding the struggle that had taken place only moments earlier. The combination of massive trauma and drowning proved fatal within minutes. Other visitors heard the screaming and ran toward the parking area to alert park staff. Rangers, assisted by police, responded quickly, closing the section of river and initiating emergency protocols. Search operations were delayed until rangers determined the crocodile was no longer in the immediate area, allowing recovery teams to approach safely. Personal belongings and remains were recovered downstream several days later. The official cause of death was listed as injuries sustained during a crocodile attack, with drowning contributing to the fatal outcome. The investigation concluded that all safety precautions had been in place and that the incident occurred because the victim crossed the safety barrier and entered a restricted riverbank zone. Her family requested privacy while grieving, and the travel community mourned the loss of a young traveler whose search for the perfect shot led her too close to one of Australia's most dangerous predators. And her story would not be the last. Just over a year earlier, another content creator named Marianne Miller made a similarly fatal mistake when she stepped out of her vehicle inside a South African game reserve. It was September 3rd, 2016, when the late afternoon sun cast long golden shadows across the sprawling bushveld of Kruger National Park, one of South Africa's most famous game reserves. The dry winter air carried the scent of dust and dried grass as temperatures began to cool, drawing predators out from their midday resting spots and into the open. 32-year-old Marianne Miller sat in the passenger seat of a rented sedan, camera in hand, scanning the roadside vegetation for movement as her boyfriend navigated the narrow tar road deeper into the reserve. Marianne had built a modest but growing audience as a travel vlogger, documenting wildlife encounters and scenic destinations across southern Africa. This self-drive safari was meant to be the centerpiece of her latest series, a multi-day journey through Kruger National Park, one of the continent's most iconic wildlife destinations. The couple had entered the park that morning, collecting their entry permit along with a printed set of rules that made one instruction unmistakably clear: visitors must remain inside their vehicles at all times unless within designated rest camps or fenced picnic areas. Signs reinforcing this rule appeared at regular intervals along the road, some featuring illustrations of lions and leopards to emphasize the ever-present danger lurking just beyond the window glass. The reserve is home to Africa's full complement of apex predators, and every year, thousands of visitors safely observe them by following one simple principle: the vehicle is the barrier. By late afternoon, the couple had already logged several successful sightings. Then, along a quiet stretch of road bordered by thick golden grass, they spotted what every visitor hopes to see. Several lions lay partially concealed in the vegetation just meters from the road, their tawny coats blending seamlessly with the dry surroundings. Other vehicles had already slowed nearby, windows cracked open just enough for camera lenses. African lions are the continent's largest predators, with males weighing up to around 420 pounds and females averaging closer to 260, built from pure muscle and instinct. Despite their reputation for laziness during the heat of the day, lions are ambush hunters capable of explosive acceleration, reaching speeds of 35 miles per hour in short bursts. What makes lions especially dangerous to humans on foot is their predatory response to movement. A person standing upright outside a vehicle no longer appears as part of the car's silhouette. To a lion, that figure instantly registers as something separate, something vulnerable, something worth investigating. Marianne's boyfriend stopped the car so she could film through the open window. The footage from that angle was decent, but partially obstructed by the tall grass. After a few moments, Marianne opened the passenger door and stepped out onto the road, camera raised, moving several steps away from the vehicle to get a clearer line of sight toward the resting Pride. That single decision sealed her fate. The moment her feet touched the ground, the dynamic changed. One of the closer lions lifted its head, ears rotating forward, eyes locked onto the figure now standing in the open. A second lion, previously hidden in the thick grass on the opposite side, lowered its body and began advancing in a crouched position, using the vegetation as cover to close the gap without being detected. The distance between the concealed lion and Marianne was short. The charge came fast and silent, the animal covering the ground in seconds before she could react. She turned back toward the car, but the lion was already on her. It struck her from behind with tremendous force, knocking her to the ground beside the vehicle. The lion's claws raked across her back and shoulders, tearing through clothing and skin in a single motion. Its jaws bit into the neck and shoulder area, causing severe trauma and heavy bleeding. The attack lasted only seconds, but caused catastrophic injuries. Deep lacerations from the claws tore muscle across her upper body, while the bite caused severe trauma to the neck and major blood vessels, leading to rapid blood loss. She lost consciousness quickly from the injuries. Her boyfriend remained inside the vehicle and laid on the horn repeatedly, the blaring sound eventually causing the lion to release and step back into the grass. Other drivers kept their distance, but also used their horns, trying to scare the animal away without leaving their vehicles. Marianne lay motionless on the ground, beside the open passenger door. By the time the nearest visitors reached a rest camp and alerted staff, rangers were already being dispatched to the scene. They confirmed she had died from the injuries sustained during the attack. The combination of severe blood loss and trauma had been fatal before medical help could arrive. The investigation determined that all park safety protocols had been properly communicated and that the attack was a direct result of the victim leaving the vehicle in an active predator zone. Officials reiterated that even when lions appear calm and stationary, they remain fully aware of their surroundings and can transition from rest to attack in seconds. The travel community reacted with shock, many pointing out that the desire for content had overridden basic survival instincts. Her family did not make public statements, but privately expressed devastation at the loss. Marianne's story proved that in Africa's wildlands, the line between observer and prey is as thin as a car door, but she was not the last content creator to learn this lesson too late. Less than a year earlier, a young wildlife photographer named Ava Spratt would find herself standing in the path of an even more unpredictable giant along a riverfront in Botswana, where the continent's deadliest large animal was already moving toward her. It was May 11th, 2015, when the African sun began its slow descent toward the horizon, painting the floodplains of northern Botswana in shades of amber and burnt orange. Along the riverfront of Chobe National Park, the air was thick with humidity and the sounds of the bush, distant elephants trumpeting, fish eagles circling overhead, and low guttural grunts of massive creatures moving through the shallows just beyond the tree line. This stretch of river was one of the most biodiverse corridors on the continent, where elephants, buffalo, crocodiles, and one of Africa's most dangerous animals converged every evening as the heat gave way to golden hour. 27-year-old Ava Spratt had traveled to Botswana with 3 close friends after finishing a freelance project documenting nature travel destinations across southern Africa. Ava was a wildlife photography content creator who had recently shifted towards safari imagery, building a growing portfolio of close-range animal portraits that set her apart from the standard landscape photographers flooding the market. Her ambition was clear. She wanted shots that made the viewer feel as though they were standing face-to-face with Africa's most iconic species. That ambition had brought her here, to the edge of one of the most dangerous waterways on the continent. The group had booked a guided afternoon game drive along the riverfront, a popular excursion that followed dirt tracks running parallel to the water's edge. Their guide was experienced, a local professional who had spent years navigating these routes. He drove an open-sided 4x4 safari vehicle, elevated enough to provide safety but completely open on the sides, relying on passengers to remain seated at all times. As the afternoon wore on, The vehicle slowed near a narrow section of shoreline the guide mentioned was often used by hippos moving between the river and grazing areas at dusk, a spot known among guides as a crossing point. The guide warned the group to stay seated, explaining that animals frequently used this exact path and that blocking it could provoke a charge. Hippopotamuses are widely regarded as the most dangerous large land animal in Africa, responsible for more human fatalities than lions, leopards, and crocodiles combined. Despite their rotund appearance, hippos are extraordinarily aggressive and capable of astonishing violence. An adult male can weigh over 4,000 pounds, yet move at speeds close to 20 miles per hour on land, faster than most humans can sprint. Hippos do not attack to feed. They attack because they perceive a threat to their territory or their path between water and land. When a hippo charges, there is no bluff. What makes them particularly unpredictable is their behavior at dusk. They follow established routes from river to grazing land with rigid consistency, and any obstacle along that route is treated as a direct threat. The response is immediate and violent. Ava spotted a large hippo partially submerged near the shore, ears twitching and nostrils flaring above the waterline. The proximity was closer than anything she had captured before, and the fading light created exactly the dramatic conditions she had been chasing. She stood up from her seat, bracing one foot on the side rail and leaning her upper body outside the open frame of the vehicle. The guide immediately told her to sit down, but she remained standing, adjusting her camera for a few more seconds, her torso now fully outside the vehicle's profile. That was the fatal mistake. The hippo had been preparing to move inland along its established crossing route, the same route the vehicle was now partially blocking. When the animal registered the vehicle and the figure protruding from its side, it surged from the water with terrifying speed, charging directly toward the track. The guide slammed the accelerator, but the track sloped toward the riverbank, and the rear wheels hit loose sand churned up by previous vehicles. The tires spun briefly before catching traction, and the sudden movement threw Ava off balance while she was leaning outside the frame of the vehicle, leaving her no way to recover. She fell from the open side, hitting the ground beside the track. The charging hippo reached her within seconds. Weighing over 2 tons and moving at full speed, it struck her with its front body and knocked her to the ground, then continued forward along the crossing path, trampling her as it forced its way past the vehicle rather than stopping to attack. The impact caused devastating injuries, crushed ribs, severe chest trauma, shattered pelvic bones, and massive internal bleeding that began immediately. The hippo appeared focused on clearing the path and quickly moved back toward the shallows, disappearing into the water within moments. The guide drove forward several meters before stopping and radioing for emergency assistance. A patrol unit from the nearest checkpoint was dispatched immediately. Ava was unconscious when the response team arrived, her breathing shallow and irregular. She was transported toward the nearest medical facility outside the reserve, but died from severe internal injuries before reaching the hospital. The official report listed the cause of death as blunt force trauma, consistent with being trampled by a large animal. The investigation concluded that while the vehicle had stopped closer to the crossing route than intended, the fatal sequence was triggered by the passenger standing and leaning outside the vehicle during an active wildlife encounter. The guide was questioned during the review, but was cleared after officials determined the safety instructions had been given before the stop. The wildlife photography community responded with grief and frustration, many noting that the pressure to capture increasingly dramatic content was pushing creators into situations no photograph was worth. Ava's family asked for privacy and requested that her work be remembered rather than the circumstances of her death. But Ava was not the last to underestimate how quickly things can go wrong in the African bush. In another park, under very different circumstances, a simple decision to step off the road would prove just as fatal. It was October 9th, 2017. Deep inside Hwang National Park, Zimbabwe, the afternoon sun had already begun its slow descent behind the acacia canopy. The air was thick with dust and the low hum of insects. Narrow dirt tracks wound through the park like veins, flanked on both sides by dense, impenetrable bush, walls of vegetation so thick that anything could be standing just meters away, completely invisible. Gareth Cole was 41 years old. an automotive mechanic by trade, who liked to film his adventures and post it online. He had come to southern Africa on a self-drive safari with two longtime friends, a road trip across multiple countries, ticking off the big parks one by one. He had no formal wildlife training. What he knew about African animals came from casual observation and the kind of confidence that builds when nothing has gone wrong yet. Earlier that same day, he had pushed the vehicle closer than advisable near grazing animals. Nothing happened. That outcome had quietly reinforced a dangerous assumption that the rules were suggestions and that the bush would give warning before it gave consequence. The park had not been silent on the matter. Signage along the route was explicit. African buffalo were responsible for serious injuries and fatalities. Visitors were to remain inside their vehicles at all times. Gareth had seen the signs. He had kept moving. The African buffalo is one of the most dangerous and consistently underestimated animals on the continent. It does not look like a predator. It grazes. It stands in the shade and flicks flies from its back. A mature bull can weigh over 800 kilograms, its horns forming a fused boss across the skull before curving outward into points capable of penetrating deep into the body. When a buffalo charges, it does not bluff. It commits. What makes the buffalo especially lethal is its relationship with dense vegetation. Herds rest in thick bush during the heat of the day, largely invisible, largely silent. They do not announce themselves. They do not retreat simply because a human is nearby. They detect disturbance and react suddenly and explosively when surprised. Late afternoon, Gareth's vehicle had stopped along a narrow section of track where the bush pressed in close on both sides. Visibility beyond the tree line was reduced to almost nothing. There was movement in the brush, faint, indistinct, a low, barely audible exhale from somewhere inside the thicket. A sound that registered as background noise rather than warning. Gareth stepped out of the vehicle, wanting to film the moment. He hesitated briefly at the edge, then forced his way forward, pushing through interlocking branches and dry, resistant brush that snagged at his clothing and limited his view with every step. He moved approximately 10 to 15 meters into the thicket. Large shapes sat partially obscured by layered vegetation, forms that did not immediately resolve into recognizable animals. The herd had been resting there. They were already aware of him. One mature bull reacted first. The head dropped, the body angled forward, and then it moved. The distance closed in seconds. The bull's horn made contact at an upward angle, forceful, partially glancing, but powerful enough to lift Gareth off his feet. He hit the ground hard. The animal's momentum carried it through, hooves coming down as it passed. The trampling was not deliberate. It was simply the consequence of mass and speed and a body that had no reason to stop. The attack lasted only several seconds. The bull continued forward, paused, then turned back into the thicket. Gareth's two friends remained inside the vehicle and did not approach until the animal had fully withdrawn. The injuries were unsurvivable. Deep, penetrating trauma from the horn impact, severe internal bleeding, blunt force trauma from the trampling. Death came rapidly from hemorrhage and organ failure. An investigation was opened by park authorities in the days that followed. The findings were straightforward. A visitor who had exited his vehicle in an area of near zero visibility, in proximity to a resting herd, with no awareness of what was already there. Gareth's family received the news back home. Those who knew him described a man who had been genuinely excited about the trip, someone who had talked about it for months. The public reaction carried a familiar weight, grief, and the quiet acknowledgement that the bush does not negotiate. Gareth Cole stepped into dense cover without visibility and triggered a reaction he never saw coming. The mistake wasn't the animal, it was stepping into something he couldn't see. And that same decision, leaving the safety of a vehicle in low visibility, will play out again, this time inside Bandhavgarh National Park. It was March 12th, 2018, Bandhavgarh National Park, central India. The late afternoon sun hung low over the Sal forest, casting long, broken shadows across the narrow dirt tracks that cut through the reserve. The air was heavy with heat and dust, thick with the distant calls of deer and the occasional shriek of langurs echoing through the canopy. On either side of the track, walls of elephant grass rose chest high, head high in places, a dense, shifting sea of vegetation that hid everything behind it. Gaps in the grass allowed a meter or two of visibility. Beyond that, nothing. Just green and whatever chose to stand inside it. Marvin Smith was 36 years old, a warehouse supervisor back home, and liked to film content from time to time. Marvin had flown to India with two longtime friends for a guided jeep safari, a trip he had been planning for the better part of a year. He wanted to film this moment, a moment to share and have fun. None of them had ever visited India before. Their understanding of tiger behavior was limited to documentaries and brief pre-safari briefings. Marvin was the proactive one of the group, the one who moved first, who pushed for closer views, who didn't always wait for the guide's cue. The signs had been there from the start of the day. Earlier, Marvin had stood briefly in the jeep, despite clear instructions to stay seated. During previous sightings, he had leaned outside the vehicle frame for photos, ignoring reminders from the guide. When told that the tall grass reduced visibility and sharply increased risk, he had listened, but only partially. The Bengal tiger is the largest living cat on the subcontinent and one of the most efficient solitary predators on Earth. A mature male can exceed 220 kilograms. It hunts primarily by ambush, using cover, silence, and patience to close within striking distance before exploding forward in a burst of speed and force that almost no prey animal can counter. Its canines drive deep into the neck. Its forelimbs hook, pull, and destabilize animals far larger than a human. A single bite to the throat can end a struggle in seconds. Tigers in parks like Bandhavgarh have grown accustomed to vehicle presence. They rest close to tracks, sometimes within meters, concealed by grass so thick that even experienced guides cannot see them. Late afternoon, the jeep had stopped along a narrow track bordered by towering walls of elephant grass. Alarm calls from deer deeper inside the vegetation had caught the guide's attention. The guide shifted focus, scanning the grass line. In that brief lapse, Marvin stepped down from the jeep, wanting to film the scenery. He moved quickly, fast enough that the guide could not react in time to stop him. Within seconds, he had pushed 5 to 8 meters into the grass. Inside the vegetation, the world changed. The ground was uneven, stalks resisting every step. Visibility collapsed to a meter or two. Sound became muffled and directionless. A tiger was already there, concealed in the cover, low to the ground, alert from the alarm calls. The animal had held its position as Marvin advanced. The moment the distance closed to within a few meters, the response triggered. The charge was explosive. A short, direct burst from concealment. The tiger made contact at the upper body, a crushing bite securing the shoulder and neck region, one forelimb hooking across the torso. The combined force drove Marvin off his feet and pulled him sideways to the ground. Once he was down, the tiger adjusted. The grip shifted in stages, repositioning across the throat until it settled into a stable killing hold. Sustained pressure compressed the airway. Major blood vessels in the neck were constricted, reducing blood flow to the brain. The struggle that followed was brief and uncoordinated, cut short by rapid physiological collapse. Loss of consciousness came within seconds to minutes. The tiger held position, maintaining bite pressure. Then it began to move, dragging the body deeper into the grass, vanishing completely from view. Death came from combined asphyxiation and reduced cerebral blood flow, compounded by severe soft tissue trauma to the neck. The guide had immediately ordered the remaining passengers to stay seated and still. A brief attempt to deter the animal with shouting and engine noise was made from the vehicle, but no approach was attempted. Forest authorities were radioed, and the scene was held from distance. An investigation followed in the days after. The findings were consistent. A visitor who exited the vehicle without permission, in dense cover, in the immediate space of an animal no one had known was there. Marvin's family received the news with shock and grief. The public reaction carried the familiar weight that follows these stories: sorrow and the quiet recognition that tigers in the tall grass do not give second chances.